The way that we help other people understand the way college and career readiness is important is by just asking them what would be the goal that they would have for someone who's college age, what would be their dream for them. And oftentimes people will say, well, I want them to go off and get a great job and have a great life. Well, in order for that to happen, we have to have a period of education where we teach people about the world of work. And when you put it in that way, most people go, oh, I didn't think about it. Because whether you make a career choice or not, you're making a career choice. So, for example, if you decide not to apply for jobs, you ultimately will end up in a job because most people have to go to work in something, but you might not be in something that you like. And so when you talk to people about, well, what was your career path and would you recommend others get in the way you did, it just helps them to kind of wake up a little bit and go, oh, no, I would like my student to be able to maybe have a different path or be more comfortable in their work than I am. So engaging them just in the how did you get there oftentimes will help them to see why it's helpful for us to talk with their students. Sometimes when you're looking at the world of work, a student will come in and you'll say, what's your dream job? And they'll say, I want to be a superhero. And I'll be like, well, what superhero are you interested in? And they'll say, I just really want to be Superman because Superman does whatever Superman does. You know, they'll go on and they'll go into a really big explanation. And I had someone say to me once, why do you let people talk about becoming a superhero? And I said, because in the conversation about becoming a superhero are the tidbits that help me to understand what it is about the world of work that's got this person excited. And that's my job. My job is to help them figure out, how do you figure out what it is that Superman does and what's the equivalent in the world of work today? And then help them find a path that's much more similar. It may have been a path through journalism, and they're going to go off and write really cool articles and pretend to be Superman on the weekends. Who knows? But it's never my job to discourage or question what it is that they're interested in. It might be my job to point out all of the things that it's going to take for them to be able to be successful, and then they have to assess, do I have the skill set? If I don't, am I willing to do what it takes to gain the skill set? And if I've tried to gain the skill set and I'm not successful, what's the next related career that still allows me to have a similar experience, but I might not be able to be Superman, but I might be able to be a related character in that same story.
A lot of what I do happens in group settings, and so whether it's a parent night or working with our guidance counselors as they go to different classrooms for different grade levels, that's where I really am able to talk about why CCR is important. One of the things that I think is important when I have that platform is to talk about busting perceptions. I think all too often, especially in education, we tend to train students for our past instead of their future. And so we tend to talk about the path that we know, and that is going to a four-year college and getting a degree and getting a job and, you know, living your life. I think it's important for when I have that platform to talk to students about how they can have an awesome quality of life no matter which option they choose. And for some students that will be going straight to the workforce. And in that case, we want to help them get a certification and get some exposure. It may be going straight to the military or going straight to college. Even within the college realm, you know, it might be that they choose to do a 2-year college over a 4-year college or a trade school, that kind of thing. And so we really, when I get an opportunity to talk to folks, I want to make sure that they understand it's about busting perceptions and living a quality of life that they can be proud of, and they can take any option to get that.
College and career readiness is such a foundational thing because that's why we all go to school. Whether we go to high school or college or a master's program or beyond, we're all searching and going for a career and a job and something to sustain us forever. So being knowledgeable in that field and having that preparation as young an age as you can start, that makes sense, then that helps to, I guess, strengthen that foundation for the future of knowing what you want to go to school for, where you want to live for school, what you want to do after school, what do you want to do with the rest of your life that's purposeful. So having that knowledge is so pivotal, and it's so vital, especially for younger kids in our generation currently.
So with testing, I tend to help kids understand how their benchmark can play a role in what their admissions process looks like, and also with what other opportunities look like. So if a student, for example, is interested in going to that four-year college, they have to know that each benchmark plays a role in what type of class they can get into. And so I talk to them a lot about how if they don't want to take a developmental course, then they really need to take the time to study and hit the benchmark that they need to while they're in high school and they have this extra support system. It's difficult to motivate a student who maybe is choosing a different path, and so in that case, I really talk with them about how everyone around them turns into their competition, and how whether it's an employer or a military recruiter, they're looking for someone who is the full package. So it's important for them to do their best because they want to show that they're a well-rounded student.
So for my job, our kids are required, even though they are in college, they're also still in high school. So their junior year in the spring, they have to take the ACT along with every other high school junior across the state and at their respective school. So I help with the proctoring of that just to make sure that, it's legit and everybody's doing what they need to do. So I assist with that, and then also our kids love to take standardized tests for some reason, and I don't know why, but some of them have taken the ACT like 7 or 8 times, and they really thrive on trying to get that perfect score. And so I work with kids a lot that we talk about, maybe you don't need to take the ACT again. Maybe it's not do or die. And for a lot of them, it also comes down to the scholarships that they're offered through college. Is if they have a certain ACT score, they're more likely to get more money, especially for in-state schools because of the Gatton Academy and that we have partnerships with colleges. So I coach them through a lot of deciding, is it worth it? Do you need this? Maybe you should take it again. Maybe you shouldn't. And that plays a big role in their decision making for the future, especially.
Through the admissions office, obviously, we see all the test scores that come through. The ACT scores, just honestly, they help us do placement, and that's really all that we use them for. Universities use ACT scores in a different way. So when we get ACT scores, we see everything from a 12 composite to a 36 composite, which is the very best that you can get. We hear a lot that community colleges don't get good students. That's not true. We have hundreds of great students, and they aren't necessarily the students who have a 36. They aren't the students who have 22s, which is okay, What we have used them for is placement. We know where they need to start. So if they need to start in what we call transitional, they can focus on things that they're not good at that prepare them to be successful in a college level class. I think that's probably one of the most important things. Now, students get discouraged by that because sometimes, there's a stigma with that, and they think, well, I'm not smart enough, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that we have students coming out of high school who cannot read, who cannot do algebra, who cannot do geometry. They do not know how to use a calculator. They can't write in cursive. They can't read in cursive. And it's scary. And so I think by using the scores as placement rather than admission, it allows us to focus where the student needs.
Part of our curriculum with our pre-college programs is that, yes, we have to make sure they have some test prep. Specifically for the state of Kentucky, we look at ACT because most of our students do stay in state, and most schools across the nation require the ACT, not all the SAT. And so we do that. Yeah, we give them mock tests. We provide handouts for them on, if there's 75 math questions, so many of them will be algebra, so many, we actually give them mock tests, and we give them prep information to prep for that test. Tell them about time testing, give them things that they actually pretend that they're taking the test.
When you coach college students, they come in to talk about careers, but oftentimes we'll say, at the end of the appointment, we'll say, so how is school going for you? What are you struggling with? What do you need help with? And oftentimes a student will say, well, for the most part things are going well, but I have this one math course, or I have this one English class I'm really struggling with writing. And we do a lot of referrals off to different departments on campus to help support students academically. So we might refer to a tutor, because many colleges and universities provide free tutoring for their students. Most colleges and universities have a writing center. So if you understand the content but you're not good at writing, you can go off and get coaching in writing. It doesn't cost you anything. It's already built into your tuition. The other thing that we do is we oftentimes, colleges and universities will have orientation classes, or they'll have first-year experience classes that freshmen will participate in. The College Career Center folks will go and do presentations about careers to freshmen in that first or second semester. Oftentimes the students will look at us like, you people are crazy. We just started school. We just learned how to do our own laundry, and you're talking to us about graduation. But the important thing is, college and career readiness happens over time. It's not like you wake up one day and go, whoa, I'm ready to get a job. There are some decisions that you have to make along the way. So if we can hit a freshman early in their collegiate experience and say, here are some things that we need you to be thinking about throughout your academic experience. You need to be preparing for graduation throughout your academic experience, because employers are smart. When you submit a resume for a job application, they're going to very quickly see, did you develop your skill set over time, or did you all do it in your senior year? Skill sets developed over time become more of a habit than things that you might have just done in the last semester of your senior year to buff up your resume and make you look marketable. And so that experience of talking to students when they're freshmen becomes important. So we support their academics in that way. We also talk with them about how the earlier you can make a career decision makes your classes seem more meaningful. And so if you're in a class and you're learning world history, you're thinking, oh, why am I in this class? It has nothing to do with psychology that I want to study, and yet it does. There's so much that you can learn from history that you can use in other parts of your life. And so just helping students make meaning out of classes that don't seem important, those generally are called general education classes, we can make the link to the career. An example we will typically use is, you took an art history class your sophomore year in college and you hated it. Fast forward 5 years, you're at a dinner party at Christmas time for your company, and somebody's talking about this art installation that they recently saw at a museum. You flash back on what you learned in that art history class, and now all of a sudden you can engage them in a conversation. So in the world of work, you never know when you're going to use all of the things that you learned as a college student. And so helping people to make meaning early in their academic experience and see value in that is one of the jobs of a career coach.
When I'm helping students explore their best path for life after high school, I really enjoy starting with helping them understand who they are and what their strengths are, and where their growth opportunities are. And I think students aren't used to articulating those things at an early age. And so I tend to look at different personality profiles that can help them draw out strengths and growth opportunities. And we also talk through their effort, the effort level that they're giving, and also the content. So if a student comes to me and they say, well, I really want to go to college, but I'm not turning in my homework for the past 3 weeks, there's a disconnect. So we talk about why it's important to give the extra effort every year that they're in school. So we talk about how they need to reflect on who they were 3 to 4 years previous. And so for freshmen, for example, that'd be 5th grade. Well, I wonder from them, what advice would they give to their 5th grade selves about college and career development and social and personal development and things like that. And then we talk in that same breath about what commitment they're going to make to themselves 4 years from now. So, 4 years from freshman year, they're starting whatever that life looks like. And so we want them to talk about the commitment they plan to make, whether it's academic or their career development or personal or social development. Because if they can make those connections now, then they can sort of have that ownership in their education and ownership in what they're doing day in and day out in these halls. So once we look at sort of who they are individually, they reflect and commit, then we look at their options. And so I want to explain to them, what does college really look like? What does the military really look like? And what does the workforce really look like? How can we combine those things in a way that can help them have an even better quality of life? So as they're exploring those options and they sort of see what stands out to them based on their own personal strengths, we can move into an action plan from that point. So this is where the coaching really comes into play, and we talk through their plan of action in a way that they can connect with, because they have ownership in it in a better way. And from that point, we talk about who they want to serve in the future, because I think that's going to help illuminate what career they really want to do and why they want to do that career, rather than for it being for a dollar amount. Maybe it's because they have a deeper passion that they've discovered early on through this process.
There are some kids that I work with that are like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go to school for this and I know what my path is going to be. And I had a student meeting today where she was like, I had this meeting with another one of my colleagues and she's like, I have no idea what I want to do. And it's starting, with some students you're starting at 0 and you're trying to go to 100, and other students you're starting at 50 because they already know kind of what they want to do. So it's just about using the tools. There's so many things online that you can use as far as like career exploration, and you can explore like what the projected job growth is, and what schools the student is interested in that has maybe a program that they would like. And there's so many ways to go about it, so that makes it a lot of fun. And especially when students they're excited about it, but they're also very nervous, because it's like, I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it's fun to like kind of help them like bring it down to like reality level of like, it's okay, you don't have to know right now, you just have to have some idea of what you want to do.
Right now at our college, we're sort of redesigning what we've been doing, and we're actually going more toward career assessment to figure out personality type. What are these people interested in? What are they actually going to be good at? Not just what do you want to do, but what will you actually be successful at? And with advising, a lot of times what we find, unfortunately, is that the advisor will just put them in some classes because the kids don't really know what they want to do. So I think redesigning our focus and trying to figure out up front what type of personality, do they need to be around people? Do they want to be around people? Is it something they're interested in? Or do they need to work in a corner office somewhere on a computer, or whatever the case may be, because we're all good at different things. And so I think finding that up front and then advising the student into classes is really going to help the student focus and graduate, actually finish, because they're interested in what they're doing.
So there are different ways that I help with college applications. A lot of times I'll work with students individually with their college applications. And so I'll talk through with students which colleges they're looking at attending, and I'll also ask them which factors are the most important to them. Because a student who is very concerned with cost is looking at it through a different lens than someone who's not concerned with cost. Same thing with location. There might be some who want to go further away and some who really do want to just stay close to home. So we look at that. For students who maybe are from a low socioeconomic status or first generation, if I know that they qualify for a fee waiver, I'm having them at minimum apply to all the state colleges, and then Berea College, who has a fantastic financial program for students. And then so individually is one way, but then also I host a lot of group events. So this year we started an event called Open Lab Day. Open Lab Day is really just like what it sounds like. It's an opportunity for students to sign up and to come in, and they can spend as much or as little time as they need taking care of college applications or a variety of other topics.
It's been very fun to help them through that process and to teach them all of these things that when I was their age, I didn't have anybody teaching me. It was just kind of, winged it, I guess, when I was 16, 17. So it's fun to help them through, filling out their FAFSA and learning, what their family is going to be expected to contribute and what that means for their college selection, and, their test scores, and helping them put a resume together is so important. And I would not have learned that if it wasn't for Dr. Wolf. So I owe her every day. Every time I do a resume, I think of her. But just helping them put all these pieces together, and their essays and their writing style and their activities and what courses they've taken, and just looking at, like I said earlier, just the whole picture that they're putting together, and making sure, and I tell them all the time, make sure that what you're saying in your essay matches up with what you're putting on your resume with what you're wanting to pursue, so that whoever's looking at this stranger that's looking at it is going to have a really good idea of who you are.
At the community college, we have open admission. So we don't exclude anyone from coming to the community college. The only thing that would put a student in the category of not being able to go to college at a community college is if they score below a certain test score. They're actually not ready at all, because they probably can't read. They probably can't actually be successful. And so we, at that point, refer them to an adult education program where they can learn a little bit more before they actually start college. So as far as the college application is concerned, we're really just looking for, hopefully they're actually choosing the program they want, not getting into a pending program, and that is like a selective admission. So any of your health programs, if they're choosing a pending program up front, they're not actually eligible for financial aid. If they choose to be undecided, they're not eligible for financial aid. So at that point, even though we have that available to choose from, because there are a lot of people who don't know what they want to do, or they think they want to be a nurse, or they think they want to go into radiography, or whatever the case may be, we are then reaching out to them as admissions counselors and asking them, probing questions to figure out what they actually want to do, so that we can get them into and actually find out, do they want to apply for financial aid? Because if they do, we really need to focus on getting them in a program that they're interested in that is eligible to receive financial aid, so they can go to college.
Paying for college and paying for graduate school, both of which can be really stressful on a student. And so at the undergraduate level, we sometimes have conversations with students about, is now the right time for you to be in school? Because if you're having trouble paying for school, it's really difficult for you to have success academically, because you're so worried about how are you going to get your bill paid. And the university is a business, and so they do send you reminders that your bill is overdue, and that puts undue stress on the student. But we still have to collect the money because they're getting something through the process. And so in the Career Center, sometimes our conversation is about, how do you pay for school? How much money do you owe? Sometimes it's just a small amount of money, and there are ways that a university can help a student. When students are looking at graduate school, for example, there are some graduate assistantships and research assistantships and scholarships and things that can all help students pay for that next level of education. We always say to them, don't accept an opportunity to go to graduate school until you know how you're going to pay for it. Because for many students, they already have undergraduate debt. So our goal is for them to go to graduate school and accrue as little debt as possible, because a graduate degree, although sometimes required, sometimes it's just a want, something that would make them feel happy about themselves, does not guarantee you increased money, increased level of position or anything. So you want to make sure that you're going into it for the right reasons and you know how to pay for it. We work with, for example, if an undergraduate student is struggling with paying their bill, we'll connect them with the financial aid office, we'll connect them with the Office of Enrollment Management to say we have a student who is struggling. In the university setting, it's everybody's job to retain a student as well as it's everybody's job to recruit a student. But if a student's struggling financially, we have to help them figure out how do you meet those goals. Can we help you find a part-time job? Do you need to have a really cool job for the summer that's going to pay you well so you can afford to come back? So there's a lot of conversation between different departments and teaching people how to advocate for themselves so that they can get the best funding opportunities as possible. When it comes to scholarships, researching scholarships takes forever. And for a lot of students, it's that because the process takes so long to find a scholarship and then the process to complete the scholarship application is so lengthy, a lot of times students just give up. But there are some cool scholarships out there, and they can be really small niche scholarships. So if you're from Kentucky, you went to a Methodist church in this part of the state, there might be a very specific scholarship for someone like you. The only way you find that is to do that research. The other thing we always advise students to do is tell everybody you know you need to find money to pay for school. You never know when there's going to be some philanthropist out there that'll go, hey, I was looking for somebody to invest in, and you're that person. So it's those conversations between all those departments to help a student be able to afford to go to school and then take the pressure off of them financially while they're in school. One of the other ways that a student can fund their education is through internships, part-time jobs. They can go to school part-time and get a job full-time. They can go through the military and be in the military 4 years and then come out and go to school on one of the GI Bills. There are lots of opportunities to pay for your education that don't involve taking out student loans or anything like that. But in order for that to happen, you have to engage somebody on campus to have them help you figure out how to pursue all of those different things. But there are a ton of ways out there to get your education paid for. One of the things that students get sold on, and you even see it in the media now, finish in 4. Sometimes you can't afford to finish in 4. Sometimes it's going to take you 6 years to finish. And if that's the case, that's okay, as long as you're still making progress towards your degree. But your goal is to finish with the least amount of debt as possible.
Financial aid, it can be very personal. And so when I work with students, I tend to talk with them very intimately about their situation. And I try to make them feel more comfortable, because I tell them, I've seen a wide variety of student backgrounds, and so my role isn't to judge. And I tell them that I'm not trying to be all up in their business, but on the same hand, I kind of have to know, because the more I can understand about their background, the more aid I can help them find. And so we talk a lot about merit-based aid versus need-based aid, how those things are different, and where they see themselves. We talk a lot about a grid where on one side we have their achievement, whether they're high achieving or low achieving, and then we have whether they're high income or low income. And we look at that grid in a way where they understand how each person has different opportunities. And I do that mostly with older students, but when I'm able to do that with younger students, it gives them an idea of why it's important to be as high achieving as they possibly can, and where those opportunities can help them.
So as far as financial aid and scholarships, our kids have a wonderful opportunity if they choose to stay in state that we have partnerships with the UK, U of L, and WKU for really substantial scholarships for our students. So they have that opportunity, and they're automatically accepted into WKU if they so choose to stay here. And some of them have such wonderful scholarships here that they almost get paid to come to school. And all of their credits that they've already taken stay here, and they have such wonderful opportunities with that. If they don't want that for themselves, which is fine, we have kids go coast to coast and everywhere in between, then it's a realistic conversation that I encourage them to have with their parents about what can you afford? Are your parents willing to help you? Can they help you? Do you need to take out loans? Do you need to find a full ride somewhere? And having that conversation, I encourage students to have that conversation with their parents sooner rather than later, because as time goes on and as the acceptances or denials or wait list, whatever, starts to roll in over the winter, it can be really devastating to get accepted to your dream school and then they give you no money. So I try to be realistic with the students, and all of my colleagues, we try to be very supportive but also realistic with them about it's not just about, you know, your dream school. That also the finances have to match up and your family has to be on board, and helping students through that can sometimes be very trying, because if they're upset, and it's hard. It's hard to see, you know, yes, you got your dream school, but can you afford it? So then we also try to work with students on finding scholarships. So it's not just about the merit-based, like GPA, grades, whatever. There's other scholarships out there. One of the students I'm working with is applying for a volunteer-based scholarship, which is a full ride to a university in Louisiana. So she has the potential, because of her dedication to volunteering and service, to get a full ride for that. And then I have another student that I just helped apply to a school in Indiana, that she applied for a program that was for a language scholarship because she loves to study Arabic. So trying to, you know, what's the right word? I guess encourage students to do their research, but also teaching them, how do you look on a college website? Where do you go to find out what are your deadlines? What application materials do you need? When do you need to send them, and who do you need to send them to? And also teaching them the financial page, because it's not just the admissions page. Then you got to go to the financial page and find out your deadlines, what you can apply for, what you're automatically considered for, and the extra work that needs to go into those things that could really help you out financially. So I always pull them up next to me on the, I have another rolly chair that pull them up next to me and say, okay, this is where you go on the website. This is what you look for. These are your deadlines. Are you eligible for this? Do you know? Are you a descendant of a World War I veteran? Was one scholarship the other day. So just educating them on that is a very powerful thing, because it'd be one thing if I was doing it for them, but to teach them how to do it is going to carry them further than I ever could.
At our community college, we actually have a really neat scholarship program. They fill out one form, they submit it, and then it puts them in the choosing for any scholarship that we offer. We only have one scholarship that's not that, and it is, we call it the Dreamers Fund, and it's for kids who are DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and they have to be under the DACA program. These kids are not eligible for financial aid. They are not eligible for any scholarships, period, because you have to have a Social Security number and you have to fill out the FAFSA to be eligible for scholarships. So we developed this fund for these kids so that they would have an opportunity to come to school. And if they graduate from a Kentucky high school, or if they receive a GED in Kentucky, we offer them resident tuition, and we just were able to do that about 3 years ago. And before that, they had to pay international tuition. So if you know about tuition, it's about 3 or 4 times the amount of what a regular student would pay. So that in itself was huge. And then with the Dreamers Fund, it allowed us to pay for part of their funding, whether it was for tuition or books or whatever they needed. You know, they have certain requirements they have to meet. They have to meet with the scholarship coordinator every semester. They have to be successful. Those kids are more successful than any of the other kids that go to our college because no one's paying for it. They're paying for it. They have to be successful in order to continue to receive a scholarship. Our other scholarships are that way as well. You know, you have to continue to be successful. And at the point that you're not, you no longer get that money. So it's important for them to understand that. But it seems like the kids who are not receiving federal funding, they are more successful. Federal funding is not dependent upon anything. You can just get it and you can go to college. You do have to be successful to a degree, but you get like 1,000 chances, and to fail you can repeat classes as many times as you want to and still receive that funding. And so I think in the last couple of years they've made some really good changes with financial aid as far as requirements to continue to get funding. I don't think that it's enough.
With the financial aid, we actually do financial aid workshops in the school. We do individuals and we do group workshops. We just tell students that this is the day we're going to be here. We have FAFSA days. Parents can come in with their information and we sit down with them on the computer and they actually get it done. We are, the FAFSA this year went live October 1, so we're in full swing with the FAFSA application. We do the same thing with the college application. We actually sit down with them and they complete the application. If there are ways that we can pay for the college application to alleviate cost for fee waivers, we provide fee waivers, and we also provide fee waivers for ACT testing as well. And so we sit down and work hand in hand with them. Same way with scholarships. We teach them how to write scholarships. We review scholarships for them, read over scholarships to put them in the best position to receive them.
When we talk with a student about what it is they're interested in doing, the first thing that we ask them is, what are you interested in doing? We don't say, what is your major? What do you want to major in? We ask what would be interesting to do. And specifically what we would say is, what would be something fun to do in the first 2 years after you finish your education? And they usually seem surprised by that because no one asks that. And we're very specific about the first 2 years because that's a time frame that an 18-year-old or a 40-year-old, depending on the age of the student, that's a time frame they can imagine. 4 years seems too far out. 2 years is something they can really wrap their brain around. And then they go, oh, well, what I'm kind of thinking about is, and they'll throw out a little tidbit to see if we're going to judge or not. Because oftentimes what we find with our students is they have this dream that they've always wanted. They threw out a tidbit. A grown-up grabbed it and reacted to it in a way that was either positive or negative. And depending on the reaction will depend on whether or not the student ever pursued it again. So an example is I met a student who told me he wanted to be a professional golfer. My first question back to him was, do you know how to golf? Not because I was trying to be a smart aleck, but because if the student wanted to be a professional golfer and they didn't know how to golf, then I know my goal would be to help the student find a place to learn how to play golf. If the student was a golfer, which they were, then my next question was, what is the level that you're playing at? Because then we need to know at what level do they need additional coaching. Never was there a question about whether they could ever become a professional golfer. It was, what's the step that it's going to take to get you there? And so in the business that we're in, it's always, okay, that's your idea, let's go with it. Let's see what it takes for you to be able to learn more about this, to see if it's going to really be a fit for you, and then how do you have success at it.
When it comes to helping to prepare students for college success, a lot of times I have to start with the very basics. So the first thing I have to do is help them imagine themselves on a college campus. They are not used to the idea of having a lot of free time. They're not used to the idea of being able to create their own schedule. And so there's a lot of critical thinking that comes into play when I'm walking them through that piece. So beyond teaching them some of those basics as far as critical thinking, I also work a lot with our partners, and so I may pull in someone who is currently in the college process or going through that process, and I just have them have those conversations. We also work a lot with our teachers as far as making sure they share their own experiences, because some teachers knew from the time they were born they wanted to do it, and some people just kind of fell into it. And so whenever we're able to pull them in and have those conversations, we certainly do that.
Well, we start at the 8th grade level, which I think is very important, because students often make poor choices their freshman and sophomore year. And sometimes they're not even poor choices as far as making bad decisions, making bad friends, getting caught with alcohol. Those are obviously bad choices. But also taking a language their first and second year, because there's a disconnect with higher education and high schools. For example, WKU requires students to either test out of a language or take a language. High school students don't realize that. So they take a language freshman and sophomore year of high school. They don't use it their junior and senior year. They get to the post-secondary level and they have to do something about a language. Now, they could go somewhere else because some schools don't require it, but just informing students of all the different things that they may experience and helping them make good choices, and then helping them start preparing for figuring out how much money they're going to get based on their grades, and that often depends on their state. But for example, in Kentucky, they get KEYS money. So talking about the KEYS money and talking about if you make these grades, this is the type of money you're going to get. But making them realize that the choices they make, even as an 8th grader, does reflect on into their college years. But just because they make a bad choice, too, doesn't mean that they can't go to college. So just because they're at the alternative school, and they've made some pretty bad choices, or they wouldn't be there, obviously, but that doesn't mean that they cannot persist to post-secondary level. They've made a bad choice. The court's going to forgive them. We should forgive them, and we should, help them succeed.
They're in this awkward boat of they live on a college campus, they take college classes, they join college clubs, but they're still in high school, so they still have curfew and they still have state requirements to complete for their high school. Like, they have to take an English class every year. Some of them have to take a math class every year. They need certain classes for high school on a college campus. So navigating that with some of them of what life looks like after Gatton and where they see themselves going and what they've learned by being here is really important for them to look at those pros and cons and see what they want for themselves and how Western either fits into that or it doesn't fit into it, and why not, so that they can then go on and be successful at a different university that they may feel is a better fit for them, scholarships, whatever it may be. So helping them navigate those choices between this school looks really good and this one looks really good, but what is the better fit for me?
Well, I think right now the biggest thing we're seeing, and this may have to do with the millennials, and I can't remember what the next generation is, but we're really just seeing that they've been very catered to, and everything is done for them. The biggest comment I hear is, I don't know how to do this. My mom always does this for me. Or, well, my counselor always does this for me. Or whatever, and they get to college and there is no expectation for you to show up to class. Well, there's an expectation, but there's not some instructors you're allowed to miss 3, or some instructors say you can't miss any, or some instructors say you can do whatever you want, but if you don't do the homework, you're not going to pass. And so a lot of times I think kids coming out of high school are not successful because the expectations have not been set high enough for them to be more independent. So I think that would be the biggest thing, and not just at Somerset Community College, but I think any college in general, and for work. If you're going to a career, you have to be on time. You can't leave early whenever you want. You can't call out whenever, one day a week and that be okay. That's not real life, and that's just not reality. And I think that companies and colleges are struggling with the generation that are coming out of the schools now because they don't understand reality expectations as they get older, as they go into the real world, to know that you have to be responsible. Your mom's not always going to be there. She might try to always be there, but she can't call in to work for you. She can't email your instructor and say, oh, my poor baby was sick today. It just doesn't work that way. And we are seeing that. And so I think, in the high schools today, if they could help get these kids out of that mindset that everyone's going to do everything for me, they would be much more successful in anything that they do, no matter what it is, career or college, either way.
In our curriculum with the pre-college programs, during the 8th grade years, when we recruit for talent search, we just begin to talk to them about high school transition and the importance of preparing for high school, and that your grades really count now, as far as keys, money, and other scholarships, that it's important that you focus on your academics. In the 9th grade, we deal with choices, decision making, and the importance of study skills, time management. Sophomore year, we deal with career exploration. What do you want to be when you grow up? We try to connect the grade with the career. Junior year, we focus on ACT testing or college prep, and then we also take students on a college tour. We expose them. Studies show that if you can get college students on a campus to expose them to what it is, it's not this big scary thing, that chances are that they will enroll or they'll find a place that they fit. And then senior year, we do everything post-secondary education, as you said, housing, college applications, scholarship, writing, FAFSA, everything to lead to graduation and post-secondary enrollment.
So this has been a really fun part of my job, learning about college and career readiness through the lens of military and through the lens of workforce, because they tend to be options that kids just don't look at. And so what I've loved is being able to get to know each of our recruiters and what their backgrounds are and what jobs within the military they've had, and all those sorts of things. And I try to then bring their experience to the students in a way where students don't feel intimidated or they don't feel like they're committing just because they're having a conversation. I've loved it. I've loved getting the chance to especially find new ways to collaborate. So, for example, we have an Air Force recruiter who's a linguist, and so he was able to speak to our foreign language department and their students in a way that got him exposure to new types of students, and that also added value to what those teachers were already doing. So it's neat to find new ways to collaborate with those folks. When it comes to the workforce, that's one area that I feel like I'm learning about more and more every day. And so we have great partnerships with the Area Technology Center in town, which is a place where it's a high school where our students can go and they can learn some of the technical skills that will help them. And then I'm learning more about certifications and how that can play a role in what our students can do. And the soft skills piece, what we hear all the time is that students tend to not really know what it is that they want to do. They tend to not have a lot of the soft skills that they need. And so collaborating with folks in a way that allow the students to see it firsthand.
All the TRIO programs are college access programs. They just serve different populations. Student support services with Chris George, who you just interviewed, they are a college matriculation graduation program. But even with veterans and adults, because we also have educational opportunity centers who serves adults, we basically do the same thing that I just described with you with our pre-college programs. We just do it as an adult level. So in the military, when a veteran comes in to receive services from Veterans Upward Bound, they're able to do the same thing, complete a college application, get assistance with brushing off some skills that they might have to get enrolled or get back in, maybe even testing, how to navigate the system of enrollment, the paperwork, the emails and all that. And so Veterans Upward Bound, as well as Educational Opportunity Centers, do exactly the same thing, just with a different population. The key for Veterans Upward Bound, however, they do need to know the ins and outs of the federal funding, what a veteran is and their children or spouses can benefit from. And so they also have to have that layer.
So I think career exploration is important for definitely college students, and there are a lot of students that are just not going to go to college, and we know that. And I've worked at the university for a long time, and I have a lot of students that just they would rather have gone to beauty school, but their parents really forced them into going to get a business degree, for example, first. So helping those students realize that it's okay, that if they don't want to persist into the post-secondary level, that's okay, that you can do these other options. But Kentucky does an individual education plan with students. They take a personality test, but they do that early on. So I think that giving students more personality assessments and helping them realize all the different job opportunities out there, that college is not for everyone, and that's why our industry is begging for people. I mean, especially in the Bowling Green, Barron, Franklin area, the areas that I serve, industry is begging for people. And so sometimes for some of the students I serve, it may be in their best interest to start in industry and then maybe let industry pay for their school. So it doesn't mean that they can never go to college, but maybe that's where they start.
College career coaches are very attuned to what the regional workforce is looking for. Depending on the community that you live in, you may live in an agricultural community, you might be living in a city that's really highly technical, you could be living in a city that's filled with factories. Having an understanding of what those companies are going to need becomes so important, because sometimes you can find a student who has an interest, let's say, in the automotive industry, but they're a freshman and they need to find a way to pay for school. What if they could find a part-time job working in a factory that makes automotive parts that they're thinking, but I'm on the line, I'm just putting nuts and bolts together that will ultimately become this car part, but it gets them exposure into that world. Then when they get ready to graduate, they'll have the experience working in that industry that then they can transfer to become a manager or do those kinds of things. But career coaches have to have an understanding of the needs of the employers in their area so that they can help funnel interns and part-time employees and do presentations for their own employees at the companies to help them get prepared for that next step in their own career. It's just the town-gown relationship is so important beyond the students, but the professionals on campus have to have a good working relationship with the people in the community.
So helping students understand regional workforce needs, it can be a challenge, although I think that's another area where the Chamber of Commerce comes into play, and also labor and statistics. We have some folks who are able to talk about what the high-need areas are, what the job market looks like for those areas, and then also how the cost of living plays a role into that search. And so I spend a lot of time helping students sort of see how their particular interest can fit into multiple boxes. So I think that's where it helps. I tend to tell students to search for careers or search for any opportunity in the same way that a student would search for a college. And so they want to find out how the different personalities of organizations vary, and they might see themselves fit more into one area than they thought.
Well, I think what students need to realize is that when they look for a job or look for a major, for a major, not really a job, they need to start thinking about their job. We don't go to college just to get a major. We go to college to get a degree. But for so many years, people have went to college just because that was the next step. For the past 5 years, I've asked my freshman seminar class 2 questions. One, how many WKU was your first choice? Very rarely does anybody raise their hand out of a class of 40 or more students. So we're, as a regional institution, we're second choice for a lot of students. So why is that? That's one question I always ask the students. And then the second question I ask them is, why are you here? Are you here because it's your next step? Or are you here because you know exactly what you want to do when you graduate? And about 95% of them raise their hand that it's their next step. They have no direction, literally no direction. I have a class of 41 freshmen in my freshman seminar class right now, and I have about 2 that know exactly what they want to do when they graduate. So we think that we're preparing them at the, which we're not, but I think that the big thing is helping them realize if they want to stay in Barron County, Kentucky, what jobs are in Barron County, Kentucky? You're not going to be a marine biologist in Barron County. Well, you might be because there's Barron River Lake, but that was a bad example. But, there's a lot of jobs that but there's probably only 2 of those jobs that exist in Barron County. So maybe that wasn't really a bad example. But, thinking about where you want to live, because students will be, I want to be a film major. Well, you're not going to film, and even in Bowling Green, you're not going to make money filming in Bowling Green, technically. So think about where you want to live. So that's when I talk to students about careers, even at the college level, my number one thing is, where do you want to live when you graduate? And then the second thing I ask them is, what do you want to wear to work every day? Because if they think they're going to go be an accountant and wear sweatpants like they're wearing to class, they better change their mind. So I think helping them realize that there's a lot of jobs out there, but you've got to figure out where you want to live and kind of what you want to make, and then kind of put what your interest in towards those careers.